Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cap and Gown. I'm Rachel Phillips-Buck, VP for Student Success at Ferris Resources, joined today again by two guests. I have Matt Boisvert, our president. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Rachel. Great to be with you.
Yeah, and we have one of my favorite people, Dr. Barrington Price.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you up front that I'm a little bit nervous because he has so many things that I want you guys to hear about that I'm like, we can't go for 3 hours. That's the wrong approach. So super excited.
He'll come back, surely.
Yeah, very happy to have him on today.
It's gonna be
so
great.
Matt, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, we have had cooler weather in Texas, which that's always a celebration. We like when that happens.
True.
Second of all, when it starts to get cool like this, I know it is time to announce our Ferris Lighthouse Awards. So we could spend a whole episode talking about these amazing people who've won things like Student Success Professional of the Year, emerging leaders, accessibility services. Like there's just so many incredible people that we get to work with. If you are interested in hearing more about why we picked these people, we're posting them on LinkedIn all throughout the day. So you can go and you can read all about what they've done and how much we admire their work. And then also, if you're listening to us in a podcast, you can go look at LinkedIn and see just all of their pictures and hear about their great work. So that's always really fun. My favorite meetings that we have as a team is when we start to talk through who we want to nominate for these awards, because we just work with so many amazing people. So we're never like, oh no, who are we going to say is remarkable? We're like, we have a long list of people to choose from. So that's super exciting today.
For sure. It's a great day. It makes me so happy because every one of these people and institutions are so invested in student success. It makes what we do worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. Also, we are on the cusp of conference season. So yeah. I think you did a conference a couple of weeks ago. We're about to head to Knoxville to do another one, ACA. And then it's just like fast and furious over the next couple of months. So in fact, I think next week when we do Cap and Gown, I may be somewhere. I can't remember. You know how I am. Like I know what's happening today and maybe tomorrow morning, but that's it. So we're excited.
We'll just be surprised next week, wherever you come from.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you all remember that our theme of the year is curiosity, which means two big things for our podcast. The first is that Matt is going to give us some curiosity facts from his book from National Geographic. And then we're going to tell you about 5 of our Google searches that we did in the past week. So Matt, what are your curiosity facts for us?
All right. The first thing I'm curious about is that this week, somehow I'm on the opposite side of you. So I'm going to move you over here just because this is what I'm used to. So,
okay. All right.
All right. So I decided, because you're talking to Barrington today, this just really resonated with me as I think about Barrington. Barrington Price is just such an amazing person. But this comes from National Geographic. This is Brain Candy. And today's is world leaders have had regular jobs. And when I saw this, I just thought about Barrington Price because I think he's a world leader. I just do. I think he could be. You know, we've got 6 weeks until an election, and I think Barrington ought to start thinking about it. But that's all I got to say. Because Queen Elizabeth was a truck mechanic during World War II. Come on.
Oh, that's incredible.
A former DJ became the president of Madagascar. So there's that. President Barack Obama's first job was scooping ice cream. Good to know.
It's a good first job.
Pope, this cracks me up. Pope Francis once worked security at a nightclub.
Like a bouncer?
Yeah.
Wow, that is a curious fact. I did not.
Well, I'm just saying, there's room in the world for a student success expert to be a world leader, and you might want to ask him about that.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, my Google searches. Number 1, over medium egg. Have you ever heard of this?
I have not.
Over easy egg, but there's apparently over medium egg and over hard egg. Over medium egg, you flip it twice and your yolk is jammy, not runny.
Okay.
Next, I was telling my daughter about
Is that a thing that you could actually do at Denny's? Say it.
I think so.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I was telling my daughter about the terrible and scarring movie, The Never-Ending Story from our childhood. And then I started singing the song and she's like, that's not really how it goes. You're kidding. And I was like, no. So I had to Google Never-Ending Story song. And she's like, wow, that really was how it goes. So I haven't decided. She's not ready to watch it. I was like, a horse dies. And she's like, I'm out. Okay. Then I was watching a cops show and the cop had tattooed on his arm Psalm 144:4, which I looked up. It is, they are like a breath. Their days are like a fleeting shadow, which I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it was on his arm. I also looked up, when did fall start? The answer was the 20th, which is different than every other year. Right?
No, I don't know.
Okay, well, you made me second guess myself. I think it's the 20th.
Okay.
And then, what are the best frozen meals? Because, I have a class on Monday nights and I have to eat frozen meals, and Saffron Road apparently is what I should be eating. So I bought one and I'll let you know next week how I feel about it. All right, what are yours?
All right. Some of these are funny. These are related. So I'll start off with Jacko Pierce, which is a 90s band. Jacko Pierce came to Abilene 30 years ago. I saw Jacko Pierce in Abilene. One of the main singers, his wife's whole family went to ACU. So that's the connection. I didn't know that until I looked them up. Related, my friend was asking, is this a jeans or a shorts place? And I said, you could wear jorts. That's fine. And that led me jorts. That led me to
you're saying JORTS, jorts.
Jean shorts.
Yeah.
It's a 90s thing, which if you look up Jimmy Fallon jorts, which is my Google search. Wow. That's all I got to say. Wow. How to remove a broken RCA pin from my bass speaker.
Okay.
It was broken. And then Panda Bear deaths, human, which I probably could have. How many humans have been killed by panda bears is what I meant, but I was just kind of. Anyway, the answer is zero.
Why are you looking this up?
Because my daughter and I were talking about how gentle panda bears are. Okay. I'm like, are they really a bear? They're just so gentle.
All right. Well, I thought you were going to talk about the Chinese zoo that draws dogs up like panda bears. That's what the genesis of that.
It did happen. Those might get you.
Yeah.
Lastly, pistachio butter, which I just got. I love pistachios, but I can't eat them. But I can have pistachio butter, which, wow.
It's going to change your life.
There you go.
All right. Well, that brings us to the State of the Union, I guess. Sorry, Bailey and I are still laughing about how many humans have been killed by panda bears.
There's no recorded record of a.
They eat bamboo. They're okay. You know what I mean? You don't have to be worried. Okay, let's talk about the State of the Union. All right, the University of Tennessee at Knoxville is in a conundrum because they have been expected to start. They have to come up with $20 million to pay athletes under this proposed legal settlement about NIL. Remember, we've been talking about this. And so they're like, what are we going to do? Because we need $20 million more than the money that we're already making. So they're solving that problem by adding 10% surcharge to all of their football and other sports tickets beginning next year to help them have this money to pay for their students. It's called a talent fee that now will be added to your tickets. So I guess that's one way to figure out
how you're going to do it.
Pay for your students. So
hey, we know some smaller Division I schools that could do this.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I really love this article coming out of Inside Higher Ed about reimagining the academic calendar for student success. I said to you today when I was looking at this article, like, that's right. Why do we take such a big break in the summer? This article talks about how, like much of our school calendar for K-12 and for college, it was built for agriculture so that you could take time off and you could go back and help your family, but it just doesn't make sense anymore. So what this school, Montclair State University, is like, we have all the facilities. We could run them 12 months instead of 8. It's going to help students with their leases. They can sign a 12-month lease and they can be here and not lose money on those extra 3 months. They've divided the year basically into 3 terms, so 3 14-week terms. And what's nice about that is then you don't have like primary fall term, primary spring term, and then also some classes in the summer. You're actually able to choose and pick what makes sense for you. So you could do a study abroad in the fall. You could take some time off in the spring and not have difficulty keeping up.
Wow.
I think it makes so much sense. They're basically just like, we need to think about what our students need. And this is a better model for them because they can progress more quickly. They have built in 3 breaks, so fall, spring, and then the end of summer, so that they still have some significant time that they can take off. But I just think it makes so much more sense to give students a faster runway to their degree, right?
Yeah.
Let me see if there's anything else. He says, the provost says, that's what it means to be a success-oriented, student-oriented university, to adapt ourselves to the student rather than expecting everyone else to adapt to us, which
love that.
Amen to that. I love it. So obviously some logistics stuff there, and obviously you have to do a good job of getting buy-in and everything, but I think student-centric, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Matt, I alluded to this article last week, so I went back and found it so everyone wouldn't think I was just making stuff up. But it's out of Inside Higher Ed. It says college students are less depressed and more mentally well. So let's peg this at our students are still feeling very overwhelmed and having depressive symptoms. But the share of students who have positive mental health is up from 2022. As well as the number of students who are reporting depressive symptoms is down according to 2022. So this is actually a really big sample size. It's 100,000 undergraduates that the Healthy Mind Survey went and asked questions about both what are the negative things that you're feeling, and then also what are the positive things you would report. They call it like a flourishing index. 38% of undergraduates surveyed in the 2023-2024 academic year experienced moderate or severe depression symptoms, 38%, down from a peak of 44 2 years prior. They're still hovering around pre-pandemic rates. In 2019, it was 36% of students, so we're 2% higher than that. But listen, you and I have visited campuses where they're like, if this keeps growing, what are we going to do? So this is like a glimmer of hope that perhaps some things are settling down. It is the second year that that number has dropped. So people are really hopeful that that's going to continue. Also, on the flourishing scale, where students are talking about their satisfaction with their relationships, self-esteem, and optimism, that increased, rising from a low of 32% in 2022 up to 38% this year. So on both sides, we're seeing some positive movement there. Obviously, like I said, it's still high. It's still a high number, but it looks like it's getting a little bit better. And then they talk a lot about how the awareness of mental health for students is really increasing. So students are more likely to disclose. They're more likely to know about resources on campus. They have a better understanding of how to manage some of those negative things. So I think it's too early to call it a trend, but it for sure is an encouragement.
Moving in the right direction, for sure.
Coming out of the last 4 years, absolutely. This article talks about embedding tutors in courses. So this is coming out of the Sam Houston State University in Texas. They have launched, because they got a grant, a course redesign pilot. They started it in 2021 and it's continuing, where every year they pick 5 schools with a failure rate of greater than 25%. And they,
5 courses?
Sorry, 5 courses. 5 courses with a failure rate of greater than 25%. And they redesign them to embed tutors in those courses. So they work with the faculty and they're like, we're just going to put tutors who are going to come to each of these classes. And then they're going to do weekly communication and they're going to hold study sessions and all of that kind of stuff, which, we love because we're like, right, that's relational, right? Expect students to go find a tutor they don't know versus like, I see them every week. They know what my faculty member said.
I just think normalizing going to tutoring is such a good idea. And so
yeah,
knowing this is my tutor for this class, they come in every week and say hi. and are approachable.
For sure.
And the more that I see that my peers, maybe I'm the most reluctant, but I see that my peers are going and doing well. It's good.
So the impact is actually pretty remarkable. First of all, a direct impact on participation. 45% of students participated in some academic support service outside of class in these embedded tutor classes, compared to 24% before the pilot. Failure rates have dropped 3 percentage points over the first 2 years after completing a redesign. One course, biology for non-majors, saw a 19-point year-over-year drop in failure rates from spring of 2023 to 2024. 19 points. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. And that makes sense for that class.
Yeah. Right? And then an accounting class that grew an accounting class where the passing of the course increased 4 points from 2021 to 22, and then an additional 9 points from 2022 to 2023. So you're just like leveraging those gains as you continue on. I think it's a great idea. One of the challenges is working with faculty and getting their buy-in, because you do have to do a little bit of sort of redesign about how you do it, but they're very flexible. Like sometimes they're doing tutoring courses after the class. Sometimes they're having supplemental tutoring. Sometimes the tutor is like, I'm going to be in this class on Friday, come see me, So I think there's a lot of flexibility there, but clearly those results are really making a difference.
Yeah, a lot to learn from. Just that experiment is awesome.
Mm-hmm. And then these last two, I'm not going to delve into because they're long form read, and I think they're totally worth going and looking them up and reading. The Chronicle of Higher Education is doing a series on what it is like to educate Gen Z. The two articles that I have for you today are, the first one is about this idea that reading has become very, very challenging for these students. So this article on the screen right now is an opinion piece written by a faculty member who's taught for 15 years. I really appreciate her because she's like, I'm not, let's see, let me read it to you. She said, every generation thinks the younger generation is failing to make the grade, right? This is like these kids these days. She said, except for the current cohort of professors who are by and large more invested in their student success and mental health and more responsive to students' needs than any group of educators in human history. We are not complaining about our students. We are complaining about what has been taken from them. So that article, along with this next one, which is out of the Chronicle, are just saying students are having a really hard time delving into reading. More than 10 pages feels very overwhelming for them. They cite things like, obviously, the smartphone, COVID, teaching to the test, but there are faculty who are really concerned about this inability to concentrate for a long time, or even that students might read a whole bunch and then not be able to recount what they've read, right? So there's that piece. And then in companionship with that, there's an article about teaching Gen Z out of the Chronicle, which is why students can't work on their own. And this is just saying faculty are really concerned because they used to give these big projects where they would say, you're going to write a research paper and go and do it. And students are really floundering on, how can I do that by myself? There's a lot of feeling from faculty. It says, faculty understand that students seem to expect someone, their professor, to spark their motivation and hold them accountable for doing it. So students are saying to faculty, like literally saying to a teacher, attendance should be mandatory because otherwise there isn't enough reason for me to show up. And if you don't want me to cheat, then you have to make me take the exam in person and proctor them, because otherwise I will. So it's just this idea of the slipperiness of education in online learning and during the time of COVID is really difficult for these students to understand. They're supposed to come to class, prepare in advance, and be ready to have a conversation.
And I don't know if this article is even talking about the influence of AI, but if you think about what a crutch that becomes.
For sure.
And I'm not trying to sound like the old curmudgeon. I'm a fan of AI and learning how to use it well.
Yeah.
But if you're a student and you're looking at a blank screen, It's like, well, what do I put in here for this gigantic paper?
Yeah. This article is interesting because the faculty member in it said, I'm not going to fight with my students. Some of them just want to do online courses and they don't want to come to my course. So she says in the first class, like, you have a choice. You can come to class or you can do it asynchronously by yourself. And she's like, it's 50-50. And then the students who come to class are happy to be there. They're like more engaged. And then the other half, they're doing it online. They're completing all of the coursework. They just don't want to have to come to class. So it's pretty interesting. I think there's a lot we could unpack there, right?
Yeah, it definitely would change my, when I was teaching, how I would rate myself. How many of my students just want to do it online? I've got to change some things so they want to be in the room.
Yeah,
and be close for this. Yeah.
One really good thing that came out of this article, though, is it's called a workload estimator. So I have a picture of it for you. It's open source. You can find it on the website. I think we have the link somewhere. If not, I'll make sure that it gets there. But it's basically just for students to go in and say, here's how many classes I'm taking here. Here's how many pages I have to read. Here's how many pages I have to write, how many videos, how many discussion posts, blah, 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 blah. And then they say, okay, well, that should take you about 16 hours per week of planning and getting all of that stuff done. That wouldn't have helped me.
I was just thinking, like, this is not, I don't see you spending any time on that.
My daughter who does not need any help in that kind of stuff would be like, yes, tell me exactly how much time, but I'm not going to plug into that. But I do think it's interesting, Matt. There was like a rule of thumb when we were in college that's like, for every hour you spend in the classroom, is it 3
hours? I mean, that's what they said.
Yeah. So it's an interesting rule of thumb, at least to acclimate students to, like, this is actually an expectation. If it doesn't take you that much, that's fine. But it's not like your class time is your only time that you're engaged in this educational pursuit, right? So
to the whole point of the articles, if a student would just spend 1 hour per hour, that would be remarkable.
Yeah, for sure. And also it talks there about, students we have non-traditional students. It's not like they're sitting around like, what should I do with my time? They're working 20 hours or more. They're taking care of families. There's a lot of things going on for them. But I do think just helping them understand there is some preparation that has to be done. You can't just show up to class and be like, what are we talking about? Right. So, all right. I mean, I could. It didn't go so well, but I could do that. But all right. Well, Matt, that is the State of the Union. So I'm going to kick you out. Thanks for joining me.
You bet.
And I'm going to bring in Dr. Barrington Price. I actually don't know Barrington. There's like 5 different titles. I was thinking about, I could call you Dr. Price. I could call you CEO Price, which I haven't called you that before, but that's pretty fun. You have a lot going on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah. So you are the CEO of Dominican University Chicago campus and the Vice President for Student Success and Engagement at Dominican University. I was reading you were recently recognized as, this is such a good thing to be recognized for. You're recently recognized as a champion for college completion by Bottom Line Chicago, which is that we need to make you a badge for that, because that is a great thing to walk around with on your lapel. And then also you won our Lighthouse Award back in 2021. So right. I just have to get out all your amazing accomplishments at the very beginning, so people will have a good idea of kind of where you're coming from.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
For sure. Can you acclimate us to Dominican University? So can you just give us an idea of what is the composition of that school and the students you're serving?
Yeah, so Dominican University is the River Forest campus is situated in River Forest, just outside of Chicago. We serve just over about 2,000 undergraduate students. This year, we brought in about 700 undergraduate first-year students, which is a record enrollment for us. Just over about 70% of those students identify as Latinx. A number of those students are Pell eligible. We're proud of being a Hispanic serving institution. We're also a partner and a strong partner with Dream.us, where we walk alongside a growing number of undocumented students. So, our undergraduate and our graduate population for the most part is a fairly diverse population. Our new Chicago campus, which just launched, Rachel, 5 weeks ago.
So exciting.
So exciting. Is still sort of living into that spirit. The demographic for the Chicago campus is serving students from the south and west sides of the city. 99% students of color, 70% Latinx, roughly just under 30% African American, mostly CPS, Chicago Public School students. So again, we're really and proudly a minority serving institution, and really happy to live into that identity.
Yeah. It's so amazing to think about the population that you guys are serving. And I want to, in a minute, I want to talk about kind of the reality of that and how you guys have become you've crafted everything you do to serve the population that you're serving, to help make sure that they can be successful and that you have all of the support that they need. But I do have to, so Barrington, you and I have worked together for maybe 12 years.
That's right.
And one of the things that I asked before you came on was, tell me about kind of your own student experience and some aspects of that were meaningful. And you and I both had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Andrea Nevels.
Yes.
So will you tell our listeners a little bit about her and your experience with her?
Well, what a wonderful woman, mentor, supporter. I would not have graduated college without her. So I had an interesting path through higher education, but found myself at North Park University, which was such an affirming environment, faith-based institution, very similar to the Dominican on the north side of the city. And Andrea Nevels, I just call her ahead of her time, just the way she thought about student success, some of the initiatives that she instituted. But what was most impressive was the individualized attention that she gave. So as the dean of students, I would liken her to the vice president at the time, wasn't shy about calling students out when they needed to, right? About having some conversations, but giving you the hug and the encouragement when you needed it. So there's no substitute for time. Yeah. And Dean Nevels was never short on that, and was just an inspiration to me as a student, and then well into my career. So much of what I'm doing, I attribute to, walking in her shoes and standing on her shoulders.
She's such an inspiration. I mean, the two things that I'll say about her, first of all, Matt and I, when Ferris first started, we pitched to North Park and Andrea, and talk about vision, her vision 15 years ago to be like, Ferris is doing the right thing and it's going to help us support our students, because we were not where we are now. Right. So, but she just was like, nope, you guys get it. You're designing technology in the right way, which is really nice of her. It was very kind of her. But also she was such a person that when you were with her, you just felt like she was paying full attention to you, right? That she's just very present with you and really with you. And so nice to be able to have spent any time with her, because it is such a full and rich time that you get to be with her. So that's great. Okay. My next question for you is I think about your journey just in all the positions that you've had over higher education and now where you've ended up. And I'm trying to understand for you, where is the place where you felt this call to leadership? Because I think if I articulated what you've done over the last 10 years, you have changed things for the good of students in all of the areas that you have some influence. So can you help me understand when you were like, okay, I'm going to be a leader in this space and we're just going to get stuff done?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know if I ever had that moment. I think how I started my career was in a college counseling center, again, at North Park. And guess who gave me my first job? Dean Andrea Nevels. So again, shaping my career. But I remember sitting and being a grad student and conducting therapy sessions with college students, and that moment being like these students are really motivated, and I can actually do interventions with them. They go away, they come back, they've thought about it, they've reflected, I see growth. And I think if I had to be specific about a moment, maybe it was that moment that I said, I really want to work within higher education. But I found myself in a myriad of different roles or overseeing programs, sometimes begrudgingly so. And then those programs really shaping or reshaping how I conceptualize students and their behaviors and their needs and the institution and what we can do collectively as higher ed institutions. And I think, you know, being a leader in this space is also listening. So I was listening to you talk about what are some of the innovative things that are happening around the country. And so I think so much of social innovation, or to be equity minded, you have to be innovative, right? Because oftentimes it calls for us to do things that haven't been done before. But I think since that moment of being in that counseling center, I've just been drawn to working in higher ed, and fortunately I've found mission aligned places that have allowed me to try some things, have some successes, fail, but learn from those, right? Because ultimately it's about how can we meet and walk alongside students towards their abilities.
It's such an interesting genesis. I too worked in the counseling center at a university. And I do think that there's something about that one-on-one. I mean, it's almost like you are doing these focus groups with those students continually, right? Because you're listening to their experience and what's hard for them. And I love what you said. I find college students to be such an enthusiastic, eager population, because they are in this place of growth. They are trying to understand themselves and the world and what it's like to be an adult in it and all of that. And so it's really interesting to think about, like, what is your first intersection with a college student? Is it in a classroom as a faculty member? Is it through counseling? You know, so many people in higher education, it's through Res Life. But what did that experience then teach you about your college students? And then also, I think there's a part of that where it's like, how do we supplement that? If my experience comes from counseling, then I've got to figure out what are these other facets that students are experiencing on our campus. All right. You wrote an opinion piece in the Heckinger Reports in 2021.
Yeah.
It's called "Let's Change Our Approach to Traditionally Overlooked Students. We Can Stave Off Declining Enrollment by Finding and Helping New Populations."
Right.
Which, what a great title, because you know there are schools all over the United States who are like, yes, please tell us how we're going to do that. You got everybody's attention when you said that. Let me read what you said, and then I want you to unpack it for us a little bit. You said, by reframing these students' relationships to learning and their understanding of themselves as learners, universities have the opportunity to boost not only the students' chance for success, but higher educations as well. So can you help me understand what that means?
Well, I think to start, I think universities, colleges alike, in education, we place these conditions of worth on students, and i.e., how you perform and produce grade-wise, how are the products, the papers looking, and then we quantify that. And then subsequently we say you are a good student, i.e. you have lots of potential, and, or not so good and you need to explore other opportunities, right? I think that all students have the ability to learn. We can prove and show the biological processes that do that. I look at my son and watch him learn video games all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I think what often ends up happening is students also receive back these conditions of worth that we're placing on them, and then their behaviors start to come along and coincide with those behaviors. They don't want to have dissonance, right, with how they perceive themselves in relationship to learning. So if you have a student that doesn't believe that college is a possibility for them, that doesn't see opportunities professionally, doesn't see the pathway or see themselves as being able to have success in the classroom, how do you think they're going to continue to perform over the years?
Yeah.
So I think nurturing and focusing on students' relationship to learning, and I'm so thankful that our secondary partners and our elementary partners have really lived into social emotional learning, right?
Yeah.
Reframing, understanding where students are, saying that it's okay to struggle. Struggle is a part of our existence, right, as humans. And knowing that because everybody has this ability to learn is really rooted in how you see yourself and how you're resolving that dissonance when you're struggling through a problem. And I think the more that we can do that, particularly for students of color, students who come from marginalized backgrounds, students who are experiencing all the equity gaps, all the social and structural determinant equity gaps that we know, the more we can reframe relationship to learning, the more those students start to show that they can engage in the classroom and have just as much success. Now, if we do all of those things, what have we done effectively? And I'm talking K through 12, all through post-secondary, graduate. We've widened the pool of people who can and should have access to higher education. And so when I hear things like the demographic cliff, or there being a dearth of students, what that tells me, there's a loss of students of the type that have historically been advantaged to go to college. There's not a loss in the types of people who should be afforded access and opportunity for education. And that comes in many different slices, shapes, forms, and fashions, whether we're talking about our migrant populations or if we're talking about just, again, individuals who have historically been marginalized. It just takes a frame reset. And then with that, I would also say that once we've now done that, then we have to come up with a sustainable plan to make college, post-secondary college and access affordable, right? So that also has to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you're talking about, first of all, upstream thinking with K-12, right? So how do we, not that when students get to our colleges, but that before that, we have given them this growth mindset to be able to say, yes, I can do hard things. I was just reading the other day, I'm sure you've heard of this, the magic feedback, which is, I'm being hard on you because I have high expectations, but I know that you can meet them. Right. Which I love so much because it's exactly what you're saying. Like, you are going to struggle and it is going to be hard, but I have confidence in you and we're going to walk along this path and you're going to be able to be successful. So I just think about, all the studies about telling K-12 students, like, these 5 students are really gifted. They're going to be amazing. Watch them. And then those students who are just average students turn out to be really amazing because the teachers are sending those signals over and over and over again. You're a good learner. You can get this. It's hard, but you can, overcome it. And just thinking about how do we have those micro experiences with our students that say, I have confidence in you. It's okay that it's hard right now, right? I really love that. All right, well, let's talk about some of the outcomes that you guys have experienced at Dominican. So first of all, you are the #1 most innovative school in Illinois. You are the #1 best value school in the Midwest. You are the #1 performer in social mobility in Illinois and #3 of the top performers on social mobility of all schools. So Dominican says, rather than perpetuating educational attainment gaps in our society, we have invested for years in the kinds of experiences and wraparound service that ensure all students have the same opportunity to graduate with purpose. And then you also have this cornerstone of your education, which is we want our students to find a calling, but also a career. And you guys back that up. 95% of your alumni are employed and 20 after graduation and 20% are attending grad school. So can we talk for just a minute about social mobility?
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that this is a thing we have started talking about in our colleges because, our rankings used to be like blah, blah, blah ranking stuff. But now that we're incorporating social mobility into what we're talking about, I'm like, let's have a real conversation about the schools that are actually delivering on what they're promising to students. So can you talk to us just a little bit about that concept?
Absolutely. And before, excuse me, I just want to give a shout out to all the faculty who care so much about the relationships and see students individually. We also say at Dominican, we educate one student at a time, right? And that takes a concerted effort on the faculty's part to care for students and nurture relationships in that way. And there is a dedicated group of staff that care so much and see students and wrestle with so many challenges again, and walk alongside them through all of the challenges. And they are the ones that are driving all of that innovation and collectively working together. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, for sure.
But social mobility, I would be remiss, Rachel, if we didn't also name the term social and structural determinants of health, because that's really what we're talking about there. And so, if I can, I'll tell you a quick story. So this was around the time of COVID, and we were looking at some maps, particularly of the city of Chicago, because that's where most of our students come from. And we were looking at where COVID was most prevalent. And we saw the prevalence in the communities that our students are coming from on the south and west sides of the city, primarily where Black and brown young folks and their families were living. And soon after, we were looking at another map, which then looked at where the COVID vaccine was being made available. Rachel, you would assume that the COVID vaccine would be made available in the places where COVID was most prevalent. That unfortunately was not the case. And I think as an institution, we were able at that moment to say, what is social mobility? We understand what the concept means in moving people upward on a trajectory to take care of themselves. But you can't talk about social mobility on this upward trend without understanding the social and structural determinants of health, the gaps that students are facing because of these societal inequities. And it's really been a concerted effort for us to understand and really dig into what those determinants are and what the gaps are that students are seeing. So when we see things like, comparatively low high school graduation rates, we know that there's so many students that have a desire to go to college, that want to go to college, that raise their hand. I think the Chicago public school system has done a wonderful job in creating momentum around students recognizing that post-secondary options could be an option for them. I think where we have opportunity is to continue this concept of social mobility, which is creating access and opportunity, right? By ensuring that those students who raise their hands are actually being met with realistic options that are moving them towards not only entry into college, but experiencing those graduation rates that we talked about. And then ultimately what happens with social mobility is you are effectively changing not only your trajectory, but you're impacting the lives of your family, you're impacting the lives of your community, because so many of our students end up going back and having impact in their community, whether they directly live there, whether they're spending time there, their resources there, or their community is watching them, right? All of those things really matter when we're talking about that concept of social mobility. So I think to realize that it's meant a collective, full campus effort to understand those determinants and to come up with real targeted interventions that are going to meet students' needs and meet them where they are.
It's a really helpful context. I think I was just reading an article about it was about holistic student support, and it was about community colleges. And the presidents of these community colleges were talking about how so often we understand holistic student support in more privileged institutions, as do they have a psychological sense of safety? Do they belong here? Those sorts of things, which those elements are for sure important. We want our students to feel that. But these presidents were saying, we're talking about our students don't have food, they don't have transportation, they need access to legal support, right? It's just a different level of support that we're talking about. And so the emphasis on, do you have self-actualization at campus, right, is nice. We want that. But the realization that there's all these other things that we have to figure out how we're going to support our students is the foundation of how we're going to set them up, right, to be able to be successful. You've done such a good job. You have, I mean, I lost track of all of the partners that you guys have worked with.
Yeah.
Both are doing sort of upstream thinking. So you're working with to and through project and the bottom line, that's in K-12 schools. Is that right, in Chicago?
Yes, they do.
So those are like, how do we get into the schools and set them up and have a partnership with Dominican to make sure that we have this pipeline for students to be able to be successful? But then years ago, I probably at the beginning of COVID, you talked to me about Unite Us.
Yes.
So can you, let me set the stage and then you can tell us what it is.
Okay.
I think as we're considering all of the things that our students need in order to be successful, there can be a lot of feelings of being overwhelmed because we're not experts in how to do all those things.
Right.
And one thing that you've done really well is find partners who are like, let us help you with that issue that you're trying to figure out. So can you tell us about Unite Us?
Yeah. And let me, before jumping into that, I would say you just made a comment that I just so resonate with. We've done at Dominican a really, really good job. There's some really thought leaders on how to do vocational sort of assessment and nurturing that, and then career placement. We've completely revised, and there's some thought leaders on how we're doing career work at Dominican. But you just named the fact of students being hungry. Nobody's going to talk about vocational and what I can do with my career or my life if I'm hungry in a classroom, or if I'm dealing with food insecurity, or dealing with housing insecurity, right? So it's imperative that, again, those are social and structural determinants and those challenges that we wrestle with that. And then I think as we talk about partners, the To and Through project and the data that they give us, bottom line, I would also raise up One Goal has been a really strong partner with us, and most recently the Resurrection Project. But I think conceptually, higher education, we've done a really good job at creating these contained ecosystems, right? A campus within and of itself, right, is sort of functions, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of work, a lot of really good work. And I'm not just talking about Dominican, all the campuses across the country, right? There's lots of really, really good models. But the reality is there is a lane for us to run in, and we can't meet all the students' needs. And then we have to recognize where our boundaries of competence, right? Our boundaries of our ability to affect change in students' lives, and not just their lives, right? Because if a student is hungry, likely their family is too, right? The student is homeless, so is their family, likely, right? Not always the case. So it's thinking through, how do you find and identify partners that are, one, mission aligned, but are willing to walk with you in understanding what those lanes are for us in higher education, and then how they can expand the expressway that we're all running on in this, educational journey. So those partners that I've just raised up are ones that have really expanded the scope of what we can do. And they've done that by just being who they are, being centered and rooted in the communities that our students come from, truly understanding the communities, and they've enhanced our understanding and our ability to really focus, right? Not on all of these things that are outside of our boundaries, but are what are within our scope. Then particularly Unite Us has been a game changer. So, Unite Us, I would equate it to like an electronic social worker, right? Like it pools all of the community-based organizations, the hospitals, the clinics, the resources, that students may need. So a student who is dealing with housing insecurity, maybe dealing with food insecurity, may need mental health resources. We can go into Unite Us. We can punch in all of the supports that students need. We can send them a little report. We can do that via email, via text in 13 different languages, and say, hey, this is actually in your neighborhood, a block away from your house. Here are all the places that you need to go. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is we can then send that referral to those organizations, and the organizations can then tell us when they've closed the loop. It's called a closed loop referral, or they've actually received the student, and now we know that the student is being cared for. And I think in COVID, that was a game changer for us, right? Not being able to be present and proximal to students.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, not only in the city of Chicago or the state of Illinois, but beyond that, in the states in which our students reside, being able to provide that type of care to our students and their families, again, has just been a game changer.
It's so good. I looked on Dominican's website, and they have a list of all of the resources. Like, hey, students, do you need these things? And first of all, I was shocked at how many things. And I put this up on a slide because I think it's helpful for student practitioners to go, oh, right. Our students might need transportation help. Oh, right. They might be struggling with utility issues or spiritual enrichment. It's just such a great list to think about. How do you have resources for these students? How are you asking questions to really understand what's going on with them? And the idea, I love what you said about, like, we don't have to be experts in all things. We just need to have good partners who are like, I know what I'm talking about here. One of your partners, I think it's To and Through, that says one of their values is, we respect all forms of expertise. We believe that students, families, and communities are experts in their own experiences, and we respect educators as professionals. We share data and tools, not answers, which is so beautifully put. In counseling, we talk about expert. Like, I show up in this room as an expert in counseling, you show up as an expert in your life, and now we're going to just talk about what we know about. But it is, I think, so important in higher education to articulate that clearly, because sometimes in academics, we think we know all the things about all the things. And we forget, it's like you said, like, we need to listen. We need to be like, hold on, you know way more about what you need and your story and your circumstances than we're going to come in and be like, this is what you have to do to solve that problem, right? So I love that. All right. What we've really been talking about is this idea that you talk a lot about a wraparound support model. And so I want to get to your new campus, just opened in August. Let me just read a blurb about all of the things you do, and then I want you to tell us kind of about why this new venture and your experience with it so far. So, in partnership with the Resurrection Project, a nonprofit community enhancement organization, Dominican is welcoming students to the Resurrection Project's La Casa Residence and Resource Center in the Pilsen neighborhood. This is a residential cohort-based associate degree program with also credit and non-degree credit workforce development, certificate programs, adult degree completion, like anything you can think of to prepare your students for really meaningful careers. And the idea is that your students are living and taking classes and have access to tutoring and career all in the same space in partnership with the Resurrection Project. So can you just tell us, first of all, how did that come to be? And then what has been the experience of launching that in the last couple of months?
Yeah, well, this was an idea in the making. It's been cooking up for about 5 years now. And then just recently, our president, Glenna Temple, and the board of trustees were looking for new innovative ideas to invest in and move the university into a different direction. And in a direction of continued growth. And so we raised that up, and really what this model is again, I'll say this term again, social and structural determinants of health. The To and Through project is the way in which we found ourselves into this space. As Dominican University has historically gone where the need is greatest, the To and Through project raised up data on the south and west side of the city of Chicago, really highlighting a group of students from Chicago public school system who said that they wanted to go to college. Some 40% of them roughly went and found themselves either in a 2-year or a 4-year institution, which left, Rachel, just over about 50% of students who were going nowhere. And so that ties back to where we started the conversation about a decline. I don't see a decline. I see an opportunity to walk with students differently. And so that's what this campus is meant to do. And the design, I have to thank so many of our community partners, residents of Pilsen, neighbors just around that are proximal to where we're located, who informed our design. So we went on a listening tour for the better part of a year. And they informed what it is that we need to focus on. So this is a 2-year degree. Students are dually admitted to the 4-year program. We've taken care of a couple of things for them. Students don't have book costs because we're doing open educational resources. Students are provided laptops. We're addressing their digital divide. Students do not pay for food costs because we're committed to eradicating food insecurity for students. We also recognize that many of our students have to work. They don't have 4 years to wait to get to work. So embedded within this liberal arts and sciences associate's degree are 4 certificates: cybersecurity, a CNA program, translation and interpretation, and a Department of Justice immigration certificate, which was all of those certificates came about because they were community driven. The community said, we need translation and interpretation services. The community said, we need immigration support. Can you design something that is a response to that? So this fall, in partnership with so many others, we've opened our campuses. One other thing that I would raise up as being slightly different, we don't have courses on Wednesdays. There are no courses on Wednesdays. And that's meant to do what we call City as Campus. 1, to recognize the rich resources of the neighborhoods in which our students come from. And 2, to give them practical opportunities to see the concepts that they're learning in the classroom. So faculty are tying to their courses, experiential learning, assignments. Students go out, they're learning about the healthcare system, they're learning about voter registration, they're going to innovation hubs, they're learning about finances through DRW. So there's so many really wonderful partners that are opening their doors and really, again, reframing how they see students and seeing them as potentials to continue to develop that relationship and cultivating that relationship to them.
Sorry, I just get very excited about everything you just said because I think about, first of all, I mean, when, as we're talking about expertise, when you go into a place and you don't say this is what you need, but you say, help me understand what it's like and what you do need and what you'd be interested in and how can we structure that in a way that makes sense for you, right? It's a foundation of being set up for success.
Right.
And then thinking about just let's make a list of all the things, of all the barriers our students might encounter.
Yes.
And figure out a way to create a pathway so that that's not a thing that they have to worry about. And
Right.
I think it is such an exceptional model because it moves from this is just the way we've always done it and get on board and come and figure out how it works here. And this is what we're doing and do it.
Right.
To this, wait a second, to your point, we have different students now than we had 20 years ago, than we had 100 years ago.
That's right.
And so saying to them, get on board and come and have you acclimated and you either are in or out, is not the way that we should be running higher education anymore.
That's right.
So I just love the sort of pause that you guys have taken to say, what are new things that we can try in order to provide a runway to success for our students, not in the way that we would, I always say, like, don't be bossy, right? We're not going to be bossy about us. You tell us what you need, and then we will figure out how to create the structure that makes sense for you.
That's right. And, again, I would also name, on the academic component that, the faculty who are also teaching here, the lead on academics here at the campus, her name is Emma Ortega, and she works very closely with another partner, One Goal. And we spend a lot of time before the start of the semester looking at data, interrogating data, talking about the needs of our students. One Goal helped us to do that. Just a couple of weeks ago, we sat to look at what students are telling us as of week 3 of the semester, and we've learned so much, right? The learning curve here is really steep, right? Just over the last few weeks, we're just understanding better who our students are, but it's this concerted effort of faculty and staff to work together to talk about the challenges that they're seeing inside and outside of the classroom, and then to design things in response, right? That's all we can do, right? Is to hear and listen and to show up and to be our authentic selves with students, but to continue to design things that they're telling us that they need.
Well, you have a great quote, and you were talking about faculty in the classroom, but I think, given this conversation, we can overlay that to everybody who works in higher education, which is we have to understand a student's experience. And if they're in the classroom and they don't understand what's going on, we didn't do a good job of explaining or setting them up for success. And if they're on our campuses and they can't afford their books, or they don't have a home, or they're hungry, we have not done a good job of understanding what that experience is, right? So this flipping of the show up and get with the program to help me understand what it's like to be you. And then I'm going to use all the resources I can to make a path for success. So I just love it. Matt keeps sending me notes. He's writing me notes like, you need to do a part 2. So we may have to get you on again because we're about out of time. But I think I think I would frame this conversation with saying, it's so important to step out of the way that you've always done things and say, let's imagine something different for our students, for the context of where we are and the students we're serving. And then, Barrington, I think there's just like all of the nitty gritty about how you continue to refine that and listen and come up with new things and do your measurements so that you have really remarkable outcomes. So thank you so much for being a really powerful leader in higher education. And I know that's not just you. I know that you have a whole team of people. I'm always really impressed when I work with someone from Dominican, how student-centered they are, and how invested they are in trying to solve the problems that students are bringing to you. So I appreciate so much the conversation today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great day. Bye.